Who radicalized who in America? Let's face it, things are pretty intense politically in this country, right? Whose fault is that? Is it always a bad thing? Well, the Democrats say these are the worst times ever, and Donald Trump is totally responsible. All those people at the Capitol before January 6th, after January 6th, the whole MAGA movement, they find it radical.
These people who were at the Capitol were really radicalized by Donald Trump.
Trump was radicalizing white supremacists in real time.
A mob that was incited by the president, radicalized by the president for his own political gain, attacked the Capitol.
You're dealing with a Republican Party that has been radicalized by Trump.
That mob was summoned to Washington by Donald Trump, radicalized over a period of months by the telling of the big lie.
Donald Trump radicalized people like an al-Qaeda recruiter.
Right. Donald Trump, terrorist. Okay. They really have gone way too far. Radicalized? No. Set up? Yes. This was a great big setup. I am convinced. January 6th, so many people went there with peaceful intentions, and they were exploited, and they were, I think, led astray. All right? The next time anybody talks to January 6th to you about what a horrible day it was, well, it was a bad day. And we saw some bad actions from the cops. Number one, the cops who walked away just before Ashley Babbitt was shot. Why did they walk away? There was absolutely no reason for them to walk away. How about the cops who let the protesters inside the building? I know you saw the big crush by the tunnel, but what about this? When they're standing, just welcome to the Capitol, all right? How about that little cop? We call this the little cop, who is aggressively waving the crowds onto Capitol Hill. And perhaps most disturbingly, well, it's all disturbing. Nothing's more disturbing than what happened to Ashley Babbitt. But the man who begged for help from the cops who were wearing perhaps $10,000 each worth of riot gear, and they stood there and did nothing. Why is that? Here they are, you'll see him, just standing there watching this poor guy who's begging for help, and they don't move. Something very strange. Look, January 6th, we don't know what the hell really happened there. But I do know that Trump rallies for 7 years now have been totally peaceful without major incident for 7 years. Doesn't that say something about the MAGA movement? And you know, for all the talk about Donald Trump being an extremist, Donald Trump being a radical, he was in many ways a traditional president who worked within the system. Now take his potentially two most controversial ideas. Maybe number one, the Muslim ban. It's wrong to call it the Muslim ban, but let's call it the Muslim ban. The Supreme Court approved that 5-4. How about building the wall? Congress fought him, but ultimately the Supreme Court said, you can actually use the money. It's legal. You can make this happen. And he started the wall. He went through the appropriate channels. Now, Democrats, did they go through the appropriate channels in 2020 when they stirred up half the country over Derek Chauvin and George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter nonsense? Now, they embraced this. They glorified this. This radicalized a country and stigmatized the best of this country, the police. And look at the numbers. We had nearly, 300 riots where there was severe damage. We had one riot on January 6th, arguably on the right. And what is the threat to our democracy? What do they tell us? They were, I believe, stirred up. The 275 riots and those who participated by the mainstream media and Democrats, because it wasn't just one day, it was every day. It's today when you still hear this.
The battle to achieve racial justice and root out systemic racism in this country.
There is systemic racism that must be weeded out.
We've got to deal with the issues of systemic racism throughout our society.
It is systematic or systemic racism through many, if not all, of our institutions.
And it gets to the point of the systemic racism that exists in this country that permeates every social system that we have here.
Let's be real, that systemic racism is part of our American culture. It's embedded in every facet of life. Systemic racism is just as American as apple pie.
America's rotten to the core. They say that every single day. And guess what? People start believing them. We've seen these maniacs. They are believing the hype. Okay, America's systemically racist and the cops are terrible, right?
Need to protect themselves against racist police officers.
Modern policing, particularly in the South and, as you said, in certain parts of the Northeast, actually evolved out of the slave patrols.
To understand American policing today is really to tell a story that comes out of slavery in the United States.
The discriminatory and racist police system in America.
The police have not actually slowed down their killings of people and Black people in particular. And so this entire system is what needs to be put on trial.
Okay, if the system is terrible, the police are terrible, the laws are terrible and not to be obeyed, what happens? Crime goes through the roof. Criminals have been encouraged to not obey our laws, our customs, and to believe that the entire system is racist. It's no surprise whatsoever. They say Trump incited January 6th, which is not true. They, the left, incited this. They made it happen. By the way, it's not just murders. It's basic everyday thievery. Take a look at this in Los Angeles. Now, this is actually, it looks like it's just a dirty train track, right? No, this is the aftermath of, burglaries. What they're doing there, they're sneaking onto the trains and grabbing packages. And they're opening the packages. Take a look. You got everything there. UPS, Amazon, everything you can think of. They're taking mail off the train and opening it and running away with the stuff. All right, that is new to me. Unfortunately, this is old news. Young children dying, gun violence, usually children of color. So many of them. And it's incredible. It barely makes the news anymore. It's so typical. It's just not extraordinary. It happens all the time. One of the reasons why it's not newsworthy, the media are not interested when a Black life is taken by another Black person. They don't care. They only care when a Black life is taken by a white cop. That's where you can gain viewers, they think. That's when Black Lives Matter tries to earn political capital. I don't know what's happening, but it's very, very sad. Now, these 4 women, all murdered, some just a couple of days ago, some a few months ago, received a fair amount of media attention, in part because some of the unusual statements made by the accused in these cases. First, you heard about Brianna, the young woman in Los Angeles, 24 years old, the grad student. This guy did it. Hopefully, cops are on the verge of catching him. We had in New York, Michelle Go, pushed to the subway tracks by this guy who's walking around saying that he's God. In Baltimore last month, Kiana Hawley shot and killed a police officer, shot and killed, it is believed, by these 2 individuals. In Chicago, Ella French, hero cop, also shot during a traffic stop. These men held in connection to that case. District attorneys, you would think that this would be the season of tough on crime. I mean, let's get this all under control. We are hearing the opposite.
What we're not going to do is if you are suffering from addiction or mental health and you commit a low-level crime, we're going to get you the services you need. We're not going to incarcerate you.
A city like Chicago, where we have a gun violence epidemic that we have to tide, spending our time chasing offenses that aren't going to have an impact on that isn't keeping our community safe.
Because they lie for each other, because frankly, for too long, police people in police culture have had a mentality that is almost criminal in nature.
That guy's just a cop hater, the DA in Philadelphia. The other 2 are making a fundamental mistake. They think that criminals specialize, like, well, I just shoot people. I don't do anything else. Quite frankly, the guy who uses a gun most likely is not going to pay for the subway to get to the murder. You understand? These guys don't specialize. They do lots of bad things. But back to how we got here, I do blame the media, and I do blame their over-the-top coverage of the George Floyd case and how they covered up certain aspects of this case. Now, this guy should be alive. I don't like what happened to him, of course not. Derek Chauvin, the cop, This is bad. This is bad. We have pointed out on this show that there is a manual in the Minneapolis Police Department that actually authorized the knee to the neck. Crazy as it seems, it was actually in the police manual. All right, but that's pretty granular. How about this? The media had access to this. Other cops were involved in this. And I think this is part of the story. And you know why they weren't interested? Because it took the racial component out of it, or possibly de-emphasized it. These are the 4 people arrested in connection to George Floyd's death. You'll notice, perhaps, that 2 of them are people of color. Now, I think that's relevant if you're going to make this all about race, and everything seems to be about race these days. If that had been emphasized, if the story had been told a little bit more responsibly, would we have had the riots? Would we have had the looting? Would we have had the chaos? Probably not. But then people would not have been able to benefit politically. By the way, if we had normalized all that stuff, Ashley Babbitt would be alive. Ashley Babbitt would be alive right now. And if this actually did happen, at least Lieutenant Byrd wouldn't have gotten away with it. What he says right here, in most police departments, in most jurisdictions, he could be indicted for. Instead, in this bizarro world we live in right now, they give him a gold medal.
It was later I, found out that the subject did not have a weapon, but there was no way to know that at that time. And I could not fully see her hands or what was in the backpack or what the intentions of.
But he, bang, anyway. He couldn't see any of that stuff, but he, boom. What the hell kind of admission is that? Gold medal, try an indictment. I want to talk a little bit about Brianna Cuffer as we wrap up the first portion of the show. 24-year-old grad student alone in that furniture store, savagely attacked and killed by a maniac. Her father was on cable news, our friends over at Fox. He spoke beautifully about her, and he made a very interesting point.
What's endemic in our society right now is that everybody seems to be oriented on giving back rights and bestowing favor on people that rob others of their rights.
Right? I mean, that's what's happening. And a society that does that is broken and sick. And we need to get better, and we need to be repaired. And I think, quite frankly, we'll get a lot closer if Republicans win in 2022 and Donald Trump comes back in 2024.
After the last election, liberty-minded Americans are facing a difficult question. What do we do now? We do have a plan to stop them. This is the only plan that bypasses Biden and Congress to save the republic. Sign the petition at conventionofstates.com.